Welcome to Liberty FM, the podcast dedicated to all things New York Liberty. I'm Felicia, and I'm joined by my co-host, Francois. This week, the Liberty had another 3 games where they face off against the Connecticut Sun on Wednesday for a camp day game, and then 2 games, one at home and one on the road against the Chicago Sky. We're happy to report the Liberty won all 3 games with Sabrina Ionescu leading the way. Francois, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. And should we say the sky's the limit, or the New York Liberty have touched the sky this week? Because after a very disappointing weekend, last weekend, with a surprising loss against the Indiana Fever, the New York Liberty needed to bounce back. And that's what they did against 2 tough opponents, the Connecticut Sun, who were like the top team with the New York Liberty at the time, and the Chicago Sky, that, you know, even though they're battling for a player spot, they are the only team that beat the New York Liberty in New York. So we knew it was going to be an important week, and the New York Liberty had to show up after that tough loss against Indiana, and they did. They took care of business, and Sabrina Ionescu. I think before we dive into those games, we have to talk about Sabrina Ionescu. I think a lot of people last year and maybe at the start of this season were probably questioning who is the leader, where is the leadership in this team. Nobody's questioning the talent. We know that JJ, Jonquel Jones, Sabrina Ionescu, and Breanna Stewart are the leaders of that team. But when it matters the most, who's going to step up? Who's going to take those big shots to carry the team? And I think we could easily say that Sabrina Ionescu gave us some answers this week. What did you make of Sabrina's performances this week?
I think Sabrina is showing us that Mamba mentality. I think she is understanding where the Liberty are right now. You're at the midway point of the season, right before the Olympic break. And it's going to be, you know, they're going to be out for a month, you know, but also for Sabrina and Stewie, they'll be playing for Team USA. And, you know, there's a lot riding on the line, and, you know, they want to go out on a high note. And so, you know, this is playing more than half of the games in the season, and you want to go out on a high note. You don't want to give anything up just because, you know, it's the last couple of games. It's, you know, you want to leave it all out there. And just like they've been saying, you know, they haven't even played their best basketball yet. They don't want to peak too early. I think Stewie's been saying that. Like, they haven't reached a peak yet. And I think there's still some things that they still need to work on and tweak. But what we're seeing from Sabrina, you see that fight, you see that determination in her, that every game is important. You don't want to lose any game this season. You want to take it all the way. You can tell she wants this championship. And I think just from everything that happened last season, especially in the final and that last game, you can tell, like, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, you know, especially Sabrina. She wants this more than anything. And I'm sure the whole team does too, but Sabrina kicked it into another gear, I feel like, in these last 3 games, where even for Connecticut, Sabrina made that final shot, you know, and, you know, off of a great switch, she got the perfect person on her and had this little fadeaway jump shot that went in and managed to seal it, and then ended that game for Connecticut with a block. So you can tell that Sabrina has stepped up tremendously, not just offensively, but defensively, and deserves that recognition and deserve those flowers, because you can see her trajectory just even from last year to now. This is a different player, or just, man, to me, like, the most improved player thus far. Like, I have to really say, like, watching her from last year to this year, you just see where she is on the court. And we knew, like, she had to work on different things. We already knew, like, all right, defensively, if you're an offensive powerhouse, most people who are offensive powerhouses, you know, they're not that great on defense, because it's a lot. You know, it's a lot to be a great defender. It takes a lot out of you. But you can see that she's driving and she's pushing on both ends of the court, and she's trying her very best. And so, you know, as long as she's giving all-out effort, she's being rewarded for it right now.
Yeah, talking about most improved, I had this conversation with New York Liberty Fan TV, and please make sure to check his contents on social media. We were discussing about whether Sabrina should be MIP or be in the MVP conversation. And I was saying that the criteria for most improved player is very confusing because last year Satu Sabally got most improved, but some people were arguing, well, she was injured for most of the season or a good chunk of the previous season, so it's not like she improved. She just showed that was a regular level.
Yeah.
And so people were saying, does she really deserve that award? Yeah. Nobody's questioning how good she is, but was it the right award for her? And should it be given instead to, like, let's just say someone that had average stats, and then the following year, all of a sudden, they double or triple their average on every category. So definitely Sabrina has tremendously improved compared to last year. But I would say that last year she was already good. So I would probably say, based on her leadership and how decisive she is, that I would put her more in the MVP candidate category more than anything else. I would put her top 3, top 4. Now, this year, I don't think, we were discussing that before we recorded the podcast, that I don't think there's going to be a lot of debates this year. I think A'ja Wilson, hands down, is probably going to win that one, right?
I think A'ja is definitely winning MVP. I'd be shocked if she didn't, but I definitely think there's a conversation to be had for Sabrina for most improved player. Last year, her three-pointer, it was a thing of beauty. This year it's still there. It's not as effective as it was last year, but
she's doing so many other things.
Yeah, she's doing so many other things on the floor that you don't necessarily miss the three-pointer because her floater is amazing. And, when she has that going for her, it's about getting buckets. Again, I think in these games, what you see with the Liberty is, yes, they're a great three-point shooting team. However, when those shots are not going down, you give other teams huge opportunities to score when you're unable to knock down the three. Especially since the Liberty still have to work on their transition defense. And there's things to tweak. We're just in the middle of the season. I think when they get back, they'll probably tighten up a lot more things on defense and just in the way they're communicating. And that's just the whole point. As they all play together through this season, they're learning each other, trusting each other, getting more comfortable, knowing what to do with each player. And that's just part of the season as it goes along. But for Sabrina, I definitely think most improved player her name should be in that conversation. From last year to this year, she's up the ante on her game. Definitely so. MVP, that's going to be a tough stretch just because A'ja is balling out. And
let's just say it's going to be like, who's going to be the runner-up to A'ja Wilson? So I would say behind her, you could argue that Sabrina Ionescu, Nafisa Collier, to some degree Breanna Stewart, even though her numbers are not as good as last year. But, she's still like an important, if not one of the most important players of the New York Liberty. Alyssa Thomas, as well. Same thing. I don't think that her stats or impact are as big as last year, but it's still like close to a triple-double on average. So,
but I still think A'ja is still ahead of the pack.
Oh, clearly.
By a good leap. Yeah. I would say her rebounding, just her presence. Without A'ja on that court, I don't know if the Aces are winning most of their games. So they need her. She's a key piece. Even though, Chelsea Gray is not 100%. She's back, and that's great. And you see that, she's going to get back to her level eventually, but she's not quite there yet. But for A'ja, she's probably going to get MVP, and well deserved, because she is balling out this year and she's doing everything on the court for her team. She is determined, but that same determination, yes, I see in Sabrina as well, and the way she has really taken hold of this team. I think last year, when Stewie and JJ and everyone came in, you felt like this was more Stewie's team. Stewie really pushed, the case for them to get further. She really worked hard. And Sabrina was there too, but this year I feel like Sabrina is at the helm. Like she's taking the reins, for the team to, put some of the pressure on her and not just on Stewie and JJ. But, now that she has this other mode to her game, she can also be a help in the paint. It's not just about getting it to your big. She's also attacking, and it's just wonderful to see that she's added this, because now you can't just guard her from the 3-point line. And she's gotten faster. And so that just adds to how brilliant her game is just becoming. And she's going to be a force she's already a force to be reckoned with, but as she continues to add, because this is, her 4th, 5th season, it's a young career. She has so much more to grow and do. She's going to be one to watch. And I wouldn't be surprised if she got MVP one year for sure.
Yeah, listen, if I'm not scared when she has the ball on her hand when it's clutch or they need a basket. So if I'm not scared, her teammates are definitely not worried when she has the ball in her hand. And that's a great thing to have when you have a player that you can count on in critical moments, because in the playoff, we're going to need that leadership from Sab. So let's now dive into the 3 games that the Liberty play this week. So they had a back-to-back Wednesday, as you said, the Camp Day game against the Connecticut Sun in Connecticut. Then the following day, playing the Chicago Sky in New York. And then Saturday against Chicago again, but this time around in Chicago. And so I don't know if you remember, but like the game against the Indiana Fever, the New York Liberty were 10 for 42 from the 3-point line. And Sandy Brandello was asked before the game against Connecticut about the Liberty shot selection. And she said that we want to take open threes. We're a team that likes threes, but you need to have a good balance. You can't live and die by the three. We need that good inside-outside attack because we have those players that can make reads. And I think that was very telling in the first quarter against Connecticut that, the Liberty were deliberate in attacking the paint. We had asked, not personally, but wished that Stewie would, take more shots from the low post rather than, shooting a lot of threes. And that's what she did in that first quarter. I think she had 10 points in the first quarter, didn't miss a single shot. So that was a strong sign sent by Stewie. And I don't know if it was totally deliberate that the Liberty, didn't shoot a lot of threes in that quarter, because Connecticut has one of the best perimeter defense in this league. And when you have Dejanay Carrington and Elisa Thomas trying to defend at the perimeter, that's going to be tough. And Ty Harris also is a good defender. It's going to be tough for the Liberty to take a lot of threes. But I like the fact that they attacked the paint. They didn't force threes. They didn't take quick shots. They had more ball movements, make the defense work. And, on the other end, also the intensity that New York put on defense was also encouraging to see, because there were some lapses in that fourth quarter against Indiana where basically they gave the win to Indiana by, being complacent a little bit. So I was really encouraged by that first quarter. What did you make of how the Liberty approached that game against Connecticut?
I think it was night and day from their Indiana Fever game. It was great to see them all driving to the basket, because even when you look at the stats for this game, they were 3 of 13 from 3, which was huge for them because they didn't take as many 3-point shots, which is what they needed for this game. And I find that watching the Liberty play teams like Connecticut, teams I would say that they're sort of used to. I feel like with Connecticut, it is a team that they know. Connecticut is still pretty much, they had a couple of changes, but it's pretty much the same team as last year, and so I think the Liberty are more aware of what Connecticut can do. versus a team, let's say like Indiana, who's a bit more new. And yeah, you get scouting reports and all of that, but it's another thing to execute on the floor. And I think with Connecticut, I'm not going to say the Liberty have their number, but they
a little bit.
But I do think they're more comfortable or just more familiar playing Connecticut. And so it's always going to be a matchup. I don't think it'll ever be a blowout. I do feel like between the two teams, it comes down to just a game of a few points. And in this game it was, they won by 3 points. So it's always going to be, I feel like, a closer game where they're going to win probably less than, anywhere from 5 points or less with Connecticut. And yeah, I liked what they did in the first quarter. It was complete opposite of what they did in the Indiana game. I love that Stewie was going back to what we're used to. Yes, Stewie has a 3-point shot, but it hasn't been working for her that much. And she's still going to shoot it. Like, she has to. Like, she'll find it again, and it has its moments of appearing. Not in every game, like we would hope, but it has its moments. But we do want to just see Stewie get back to that bread and butter, like the mid-range fadeaways,
she's got post. Everything in the arsenal when it comes to post moves and shots in the within the arc. So
and so I think that's just something when she's in that mode, it's hard to stop her. It's very hard to stop her. And just to see them come out and attack the way they do, and to have that great first quarter where they outscored the Sun 29-19, not taking as many 3-point shots, not having as many turnovers in this whole game, all of that will play in their favor. And if they continue to play like that, like we are seeing them do, the sky's the limit for them. They can keep going, and they can really win this thing. But they got to get out of their heads of, I'm glad they got out of their heads of shooting the 3-ball for so many times like in the previous game.
Yeah, and when you think about Breanna Stewart versus Alyssa Thomas, who's usually the primary defender against her. Mm-hmm. Alyssa Thomas has been more successful at defending Brionna Stewart at the perimeter rather than at the post or in the paint. Because I remember the previous game, the problem with Stewie was that she was quite often very static and was trying to create plays from a starting point rather than in movement. So she can do that when she's in the paint or at the post because she has so many things in the arsenal, and she's taller than Alyssa Thomas. So that makes it very difficult for her to defend her within the arc. Whereas the perimeter, Alyssa Thomas is strong and quick, and makes it really difficult usually for Stewie. So that was definitely a nice adjustment compared to previous games. The thing that we also forgot to talk about was the fact that Betnijah Laney was out once again. After coming back against Indiana, she was out again against Connecticut with knee soreness. So let's hope that it's nothing too serious. And in a way, it's good that the Olympic break is coming up, since she's not going to be part of the Olympics. It would be a good time for her to rest. Yeah. But Sandy decided to have Leonie Fiebich as a replacement in the starting lineup, and to still trust Vandersloot in the starting lineup. Now, I know a lot of fans, have a lot of things to say about Sloot starting, but I think in the end, what matters is who ends the game rather than finishing. And I think for Sloot, it's probably best to start the game, get her legs going. And I would say that, for people that have been criticizing her, that was probably her best game of the season against Connecticut.
For sure. I was really proud of Courtney Vandersloot, just seeing her come out and be aggressive. And again, a team a team you understand well. And she performed well. I think this was one of her better games since coming back, but I think one of her better games this season thus far, where she had 11 points. She contributed on, both ends of the floor as well, getting a block in there, and so I just love for Sloot to just continue. I know it's tough sometimes. Like, there are some matchups for Sloot that, yeah, it just doesn't suit her. But I think for Connecticut, she plays better against them, I feel like. I think that, this wasn't a bad matchup for her at all. And she deserves that time. She's still the general. She still deserves time to start. Yeah, we can question maybe with certain teams, but I think if you have her start a game, you can always have Fiebich come in. You can have other people switch out for her later on, and she can still get some minutes still, because you're still gonna need her. You don't want to just bench her.
Yeah.
You still need Sloot out there. She's still a key part of this team, and I think the way Sandy has played it so far, with Sloot starting, and then she kind of brings her in and out at times. And and it's the right matchup too. I think in this game there were moments where the matchup got a little shaky, but it wasn't just Sloot's fault. I think it was just
it's because Sandy had decided to put a lot of the bench players together with Sloot and JJ.
And I think that
they were not gelling so well.
Yeah, that just didn't work well. And so I think that was just, a rotation issue and not so much Sloot's fault or anything. But I think, as Courtney goes, this team still goes, because when you see her and her passing and her assists, like, even if she's not shooting the ball well, she's still getting her teammates open and getting them the ball and having amazing assists out there. So she is still an integral part of this team, and she deserved those minutes out there. But I do think with Leonie Fiebich, she is rising to another level, and it baffles me that this girl is a rookie, but just seeing her more comfortable and just her length and how she can just guard anyone on the floor, her shooting, as she's becoming more confident in her shooting as well. So it's just good to see that the more minutes she gets, she feels more comfortable. The team is trusting her. It's great. The fact that we have Leonie Fiebich is a fantastic pickup for the Liberty, because they're going to need her down the stretch, especially defensively when they come back from break. You're going to need the likes of her and others from the bench, like Kennedy Burke. Obviously, Kayla Thornton, like, she's on a roll as well. So you're going to need all of them to get the Liberty over the hump and hopefully, win a championship.
Yeah, like I was looking at how the New York Liberty acquired Leonie Fiebich. So she was drafted by the LA Sparks in 2020. When teams draft an international player, it's always a gamble, or for the future, where they're not necessarily going to need them right away, but in few years, developing, playing in Europe or elsewhere, they would develop and be really strong players. Now, Nyara Sabally, the other day after the game in New York against Chicago, was sharing to the press that she doesn't necessarily consider Leonie Fiebich as a rookie because she has already so much experience at a pro level. She played in Spain, a little bit in France, in Australia, in Germany. So she has a unique experience that college players don't necessarily have. So you knew that with that experience in Europe and Australia, that she would be probably more ready than any other rookie. And so that's a luxury. But how the Liberty acquired her was that when Chicago Sky traded for Marina Mabry who was playing in Dallas at the time, and so they had to kind of make a free team trade to get her. And so the New York Liberty sent Michaela Onyewerre to the Phoenix Mercury. Diamond DeShield was in Phoenix, and she went to Dallas. And then Chicago, who had obtained the rights of Fiebich through Azura Stevens going to the Sparks, I know it's complicated, had to give the rights, the draft rights of Fiebich to the New York Liberty.
Well, we thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
As complex as that was, from LA, Chicago, we thank you all.
On behalf of Leonie Fiebich, we could say thank you to James Wade, the former coach and general manager of the Chicago Sky, because I think that would be a player that would be tremendous for the Chicago Sky right now.
Or or Phoenix.
Or
at this
Phoenix.
Point, you know.
But we're glad to have her in New York, and her versatility has been incredible. We'll talk more about Fiebich, especially when it comes to the matchup against the Chicago Sky. But it's a true blessing to have such a player that is quote unquote rookie. But let's go back to the Connecticut game. And unfortunately with the Liberty, we're starting to get used to it now. The second quarter debacle, should I say. I mean, you know, it wasn't so much a debacle, but definitely Connecticut made a comeback in the second quarter. And the key player was Brionna Jones, who was tremendous in the paint. And JJ, you know, she had a lot on her hands defending against Brionna Jones. What did you make of that comeback and Brionna Jones' performance?
I do think, it's a game. You can tell so much a game of runs. And Connecticut's a tough team. They can hit right back. You know, you may take a lead, but they can come right back. They won the second quarter 19-10 on the Liberty. The Liberty were missing a lot of shots too. And, you know, just... I think also the lineup that they had out there initially didn't start off well. You had three quick turnovers for the Liberty when that quarter started. And so that, you know, obviously with those turnovers, you're giving Connecticut easy points at this point. So it was a rough one. They're usually, we know them to start strong in the first, not so great in the second, and then they tend to fight back in the third and fourth, and that's sort of what they did here as well. They remain pretty consistent. I think, you know, they have to clean up the areas they need to clean up so they can win quarter by quarter and focus on each quarter and win each quarter. Because you can't always have these lapses with certain teams, and, you know, you give them momentum. You give them momentum right back to your opponent. And anything can happen in a game. You know, yes, you can have different runs. You go on a run, the Liberty go on a run, Connecticut goes back on a run. It was going back and forth pretty much through the game. But I think what's also key, you know, for the Liberty was that Connecticut, you know, maybe attribute that to the Liberty defense. You know, Connecticut had their own struggles, which, you know, I think helped the Liberty as well. Like Dejanay Carrington has been a bright spark for them, and also someone who may be in the conversation for most improved player, you know, because she was on the bench last year, coming from the bench, and now she's a starter. So, and she's been doing well for them, and defensively she does well for them. But in this game, she only had 8 points. And then Alyssa Thomas, obviously she's always, you know, a triple-double threat. Yeah, she helped with rebounds and assists, but only had 3 points. And so when you have a couple of your starters who are crucial in just those points and needing those point differentials, you know, it went in the Liberty's favor this time around.
Yeah, so, you know, the Liberty had a 14-point lead at some point in the second quarter, and it became, I think, a 1-point game at halftime. But the second half, I would say that the Liberty turned things around when it comes to defending Brionna Jones and really, you know, make it more difficult for her. She wasn't as impactful in the second half. And like you said, Alyssa Thomas only had 3 points. Those 3 points came in the second half. So you're happy, you know, any game if you limit Alyssa Thomas to only 3 points. But I think the second half, I would say it was probably a battle between DeWanna Bonner and Sabrina Ionescu. DeWanna Bonner, I mean, you know, Sandy Brandello is praising her former player. She won a title with her in Phoenix in 2014. But it's like, you know, she's getting better and better as she's aging, which is incredible. And she's just a poison to defend against. I would not want to defend against someone like her. She's tall, she's quick, she's using screens very well, she has a quick trigger, and she was really carrying the team, Connecticut, in the second half. And, you know, it wasn't good for Liberty fans, and, you know, if you have a high blood pressure, because it was back and forth between the two teams all throughout the second half. But Sabrina Ionescu, we mentioned her at the beginning of this podcast. I think that she knew that, she needed to step up for a team. And the level of confidence that she played was incredible. And so, it was going back and forth. At some point, Connecticut took the lead for, the first time in a very long time since the beginning of the game. I think they were up 5-4 at the beginning of the game. And so Sabrina had a really nice floater that, both gave the lead again for the Liberty, a 1 point lead. And then they managed to have a stop on the other end. Mm-hmm. And then Sabrina got the ball, dribble for quite a bit, try to kill time, turning around and driving Alyssa Thomas crazy. And then, there was a screen set. I can't remember if it was Stewie. So, they had the switch. I think that's what Connecticut wanted. They wanted Bonner on Sabrina rather than Alyssa Thomas, because Sabrina is quicker than Alyssa Thomas. But Bonner can match up her speed, and she's got the length.
Yeah.
And Sabrina went for a floater where she kind of used actually her body to create the space on Bonner. And the extension in the air was incredible. That was a beautiful floater by Sabrina that gave a 3-point lead for the Liberty with only 5 seconds remaining on the clock. So Connecticut took a timeout and did a play that worked pretty well in the first half, where Alyssa Thomas gets the ball from the arc and passes the ball in the opposite direction. This time around, it was for Ty Harris. Mm-hmm. But if you had told me that Sabrina Ionescu would have a block to win the game, I mean, they were up by 3.
Mentality, y'all.
It was incredible. So, she has some lapses sometimes on defense, and teams will make her pay. But her defense this year compared to last year is definitely not the same. And for her to have the blocking the block at the end for the win, that was the nail in the coffin, the cherry at the top of the cake. That was incredible.
But I think it's also, that drive, the importance that, I think she said it at the end of the game. They didn't want to go to overtime.
because
you're on a back-to-back,
yes.
Because the next day you got to go back home and you're playing Chicago. The last thing you want to do is extend this game. You want to go home, rest, get prepared for the next game, which was the following night. And she's going to give it her all, and that's what she's been doing. And that's what she's also inspiring and pushing her teammates to do. And you can see that, for Sabrina, she really wants this really bad. And I mean, in this game, the Liberty has 6 blocks in total. So it was a block party for them. And it's just great, again, to see Sabrina in her bag and just seeing her step up the way that she has. And, people think that they can just kind of run around her when she's playing defense. But I think teams are also realizing, no, it's not so easy to get around her, anymore. And so she's really doing well in that arena. So I think, this game was an important win for them. Now they're up, 2-0? They've won both games so far.
Yes.
Against Connecticut. They have another one at home before the break against Connecticut. So hopefully we get another victory next week and go into a break on a high note.
Yeah, so great win by the New York Liberty. That also helped them to take solely the number 1 spot in the league. Because they were tied before that matchup. So great win. But they didn't have time to celebrate because the next day they were facing the Chicago Sky, the only team that beat them in New York so far. And, it's 1-1 in this matchup. We managed to beat them in Chicago. So it was going to be an interesting matchup. Obviously, a lot of people were going to come to that game to see also Angel Reese, who is battling for Rookie of the Year with Caitlin Clark. She had a streak of 14 double-doubles before this game. So there was a lot, to compete for. And before the game, even though Angel Reese is the attraction for the fans and for Chicago Skies fans, I would say that according to Sandy Brandello, is Chennedy Carter's team at the moment. She's been balling all season long. under the guidance of Teaspoon. But I think in the past 4 or 5 games, she's averaging about 25 points a game, if I'm not mistaken. So, Sandy was very aware that she's a key part of that team and caused quite a few problems in the first two matchups against them. So definitely, I felt like Sandy pre-game, that was definitely one of the focus of the game is to make sure to lock Chennedy Carter. And I think they did a pretty good job in this game. Even though she did score quite a lot of points in the first half, she didn't score as many points in the second half. And I think that, Leonie Fiebich had said that it was very important to not let her drive baseline, but more like guide her towards the top of the key or inside the paint so that, they could really trap her and make it really difficult for her to score. So that was great to see. But in the first half, I would say, especially in the first quarter, Chicago, was really dominant in that first quarter. And I think the Liberty, I know that they were effective scoring in the paint in the second matchup in Chicago, but I felt like in this quarter they were forcing a little too much their shots. Sabrina in the first half was 0 for 7, which is very unusual. And I was a little worried at first in the way the Liberty started this game and how it was hard for them to score.
Yeah, they were sped up a bit, and I think they were just rushing shots and not finishing well, because you would see the opposite at the end of the court by Chicago, how they finished well, at the rim. And it just seemed like, the Liberty rushed their shots. They were just pushing maybe a little too hard, and they needed to kind of slow down, take control back of the game. And they didn't necessarily do that in the first quarter. They needed to kind of shake this off because Chicago is quick. Chennedy Carter, she's one of the fastest players out there, and she has been balling. And so it's not an easy task. And, Fiebich was one of the defenders on her. And, even she said it is really hard, but you try to just stay in front of her as best you can. Try to push her to the outside so she doesn't get around you that easily. And she's just so quick. So she's going to score points. It's kind of like Caitlin Clark. They're going to get points, but try to limit the damage as much as you can. Because I think her previous game, she scored over 30 points maybe.
Yeah.
And so, you want to limit how much damage she can do, so that gives your team an opportunity to just stay in the game, take the lead, or just be more dominant overall. And initially I think it was a bit tough, but I think they locked in, later into the second quarter and into the second half. They did a lot better with toning things down for her and pushing her out. Like, she won't have it as easy getting to the basket. She's not. And with Leo's length, it provides such a great benefit between Leo, Stewie, and JJ. You have such length out there that it's going to be pretty hard to get a shot up without it being blocked. And speaking of blocks, it was another.
I know where you're going to
It was another block party.
Woo!
Another one. They had 8 blocks, and I don't even know which block to talk about at this point.
Well, JJ, to begin with, she had 2 or 3 monstrous blocks against Angel Reese. Yeah. That was a thing of beauty.
Yeah, Angel is also, she obviously is popular, and her rebounding and getting the double doubles. And I think, for the Liberty, they know you're not going to set records on us. And so, yes, but Angel still got her double-double, just barely in this game. She was able to get her 15th double-double. But the block between Stewie,
2 blocks for Stewie, 4 for Jonquel Jones, and 2 for Nyara Sabally.
Man. And those were all wonderful to see, and it was great, too, to have Nyara back.
First game back,
her,
yes.
She's on minutes restriction. Just great to see her back and just playing with the team and getting her ready. Also because, she needs to also prepare, get herself some minutes out there, because she's also going to play most likely for Germany in the Olympics. So it was just great to see her back out and be able to sub in for JJ and have good quality minutes, have some good shots. She's not going to get as many points. She's just kind of getting back into rhythm and, being out for basically over a month. Like, you got to condition yourself again to get back to that form and be able to run the floor. So it was just great overall to just see her out there too. So overall, I think this game, I always thought it was going to be a battle, because Chennedy Carter is such a great player and they have a great coach. Let's not forget Teaspoon. I think for Chicago Sky, for this particular team, they have a great coach in Teresa Weatherspoon, and they're going to be coached hard. She knows exactly who to go at, and they're going to perform. And Chennedy Carter is one of those people. Angel Reese, one of those people. And also, it's difficult. You also have Cardozo out there, and even for JJ, she had a tough time going between Cardozo and Angel Reese initially,
but she figured it out after.
She figured it out come the second half. But yeah, that first half was a bit tough for, her and Stewie at times, either just kind of forcing the shot up because you got a 6'7" Cardozo who she can handle her own under the basket. So yeah, she figured it out into the second half, and obviously Sabrina was also leading the way. And yeah, I think overall they just had a great game, and it was a fight, and it was a fight that we knew the Liberty needed to win, and they needed to make sure that this win at home was that win they got back, because yes, the Chicago Sky beat them at home. That was the only game they lost at home, I think.
Yes, it was.
So they needed to make that statement win, like, yeah, you're not getting another win on our home court ever again.
Well, I mean, to talk again about Jonquel Jones and Breanna Stewart, and you can include Nyara Sabally. They are very unique in the sense that they are bigs, but they can dribble the ball from the perimeter and attack the basket. Yeah. So. And they can also take shots. Not so much Nyara Sabally. She doesn't necessarily take threes, but she could take some shots if she needs to.
3-point shot. Yeah.
So it kind of forces Cardoso and Angel Reese to get out of the paint a bit more. And they're very unpredictable. So I think that they were able to figure things out in the second half, and definitely were more deadlier in the scoring. And Sabrina, I was definitely happy that she found the adjustments in the second half. Nothing was getting in the first. Second half, it was almost like the Sab from last year, where the 3-pointers were coming from everywhere. Yeah. It was incredible. And even rewatching some of the videos I recorded, like the way she uses screens from Stewie, from JJ, and then pick and rolls, passing, giving dimes for them, or even taking the shots, so an open shots off the screen. It was incredible, her level in the second half, and that was really helpful. But I really need to mention another player that we didn't mention so far. It's Kayla Thornton. I think that Kayla Thornton has those moments where it's the Kayla Thornton's game, and then the next game she probably a little more quieter. But this game, she was incredible. And what was very telling is what her teammates had to say about her and her performance in that game. Stewie was full of praise for Kayla Thornton, saying that, she's a key part of what they do, and they need her to go all the way. Leonie Fiebich mentioned that she wouldn't want to defend, she wouldn't want to have her as a primary defender if she was on the other team. And then Sabrina also was praising that defensive effort where she went after the ball and then went all the way up to the hole.
Ran out the stadium.
I ran out of the stadium. I mean, she was probably out of breath and a little tired, but they were all praising a defensive effort. We know that Kayla Thornton, her thing is defense. But this year, she's taken a leap offensively. We know that the team was definitely asking her to work on some things offensively, and she was balling. I mean, if you get her the ball at that corner, it was money. Bucket after bucket, freeze after freeze. And, that helped to create a bigger gap at the end than what, it reflected. Overall, the game was much tighter than what the score reflected, but Kayla Thornton is almost a luxury to have and the team. And yeah, it would have been, something to not mention a performance. What did you make of Kayla Thornton in this game?
KT is a necessary piece for this team winning. She is an all-out dog on the court. Her defense, just how quick, even, she got a round of applause, basically helping out JJ. JJ had a bad pass, which ended up a turnover, and Kayla ran that down and managed to try to get the ball back or just disrupt that whole play from happening, and couldn't stop her momentum from leading her, getting her all the way into the tunnel and coming out and having a standing ovation, because it's just all out effort. And that's what you want from all your players, an all out effort, that you just don't give up an easy bucket. And she wasn't about to give up an easy bucket. And so and then she was knocking down threes. She ended up with 16 points. Plus minus, she was plus 19 on the court. I mean, she's huge for this team, and you need that all-out effort. And when she was knocking down those threes, I couldn't help but think about Stewie nicknaming her Kathrila.
That's the best nickname ever.
She's Kathrila.
She has to trademark this one.
And then I think even when you saw some of it too, Sabrina was getting in on 3-point action. I think they were calling Sab Sathrila. So these are all the new nicknames we hear out there. But KT's huge. KT's an integral part. And without that defense, especially with Benijah, not in the lineup this game and the next one, you're going to need KT is going to step up, and she's going to take whatever minute she gets, and she's going to make sure that even whether or not she has a great offensive night, defensively, she's going to make it tough on her opponents.
Yeah, and what was interesting after the game, she talked about the fact that the coaches emphasize transition defense, which has been one of the weaknesses this season for the Liberty. And I think that, she took it at heart to make sure that she would do everything she can to help the Liberty on transition defense. And it was very telling, because there was one player where she was chasing down Marina Mabry and caused her to have an offensive foul, which was incredible. When you just watch the play, you see KT running like crazy and then ends up provoking the offensive foul. And then there were a couple of plays where she had great steals that generated a fast break for the Liberty, with Stewie most of the time at the heart of the fast break, and then generating frees and easy baskets. So, when you have someone that gives that energy on defense that, leads to great offense, that's a luxury to have in a team. And so it was a great performance overall by the Liberty. And again, in front of a record-breaking attendance for the Barclays. I think that there were a couple of mistakes at the end of the game. They were saying that it was a record attendance in the history of the Liberty, but I think it was incorrect, because when they were playing at the Madison Square Garden, which is a bigger arena, they had slightly bigger crowds, especially in the heydays of the Liberty. But nevertheless, it was a record at the Barclays for a Liberty game. And, yes, a lot of people came to see Angel Reese, but it is also due to the Liberty and how they've been playing this year, being top of the league. So that was a great atmosphere and a great way to show up and get the win. And so last game of the week, how many games? 3 games in 4 days. This schedule this year is absolutely insane. And probably as a result, the Liberty wanted to be cautious and decided to give a rest to Breanna Stewart. She was questionable before the game with a right hamstring, but she ended up not playing. Sandy did say that it was, try to be cautious more than anything else, because there's another game next week against Connecticut, and then the All-Star game, and then the Olympics are approaching. So I think it was very wise. And it was maybe a way to show whether our bench can step up, which they did. And I remember that a lot of people were very skeptical about the recruits that the Liberty had this offseason. No flashy signing like we had last year when we had Sloot, Breanna Stewart, and Jonquel Jones. But, role players, bench players that can really bring a spark and really help this team. We knew that they needed to have more size, more versatility. And it was very telling in this game. Ivana Dojkic, who had not played for a long time, had probably her best game with the New York Liberty. Yeah. Scoring 11 points?
12 points.
12 points. She had 11 points in the first half. Kennedy Burke, who gave good minutes, attacking the basket, scoring threes, good defense. Fiebich, who's at some point, maybe she should stay in the starting lineup at this point. They brought great energy, great defense, great offense as well. What did you make of those considered role players that we're starting today?
It was fantastic. I think, with Stewie and Benaja out, I was wondering how this game would go. I thought it would be a tighter game just because with Stewie out and you have, Cardozo and Reese on the other end, you're left with one true big. Like, I don't see Fiebich as a big. Like, even though she has the length, she's 6'4".
She's taller than Angel Reese.
And that's wild to me because I'm just like, when I see her up against, I always think Angel Reese is taller for some reason. But anyway, but with Cardozo there, it makes it even tougher. And so I thought it would be a harder job. And initially, it was a rough start. That first quarter was, I feel like, rough on both teams. A lot of shots were being missed. But their bench, you gotta give kudos to the bench that they came in, they did what they needed to do to get this win on the road. Usually your bench players do well at home versus on the road, and they went on the road and did such a great job. Like, you just needed to stay in the game, and they did more than that. Just seeing Fiebich and Dojkic coming out and getting 12 points in this game and playing the way she played, and knowing that it's not easy not playing for a number of games.
She had maybe 3 or 4 DNPs. So that's not easy.
And that's not easy to just come in to a game and then hitting shots. She had a steal. She was all over the place. And it was good to see that she, on both ends of the court, was just making her name known. And I was proud of her because I was like, man, what's Dojkic going to do? Because lately when she comes in, even if it's for a minute or two, it gets a little wild.
Yeah.
But I think that's also because she doesn't get enough reps. So you're not really sure what she can do. Fiebich is now comfortable, so you know what she can do. Burke is getting more minutes. And now that Burke started today, she did a great job as well. She came in and, for her having 7 points, Fiebich 13 points, Dojkic 12 points, Sabally 6 points. The only person that actually didn't score, who had a rougher time, was Kayla Thornton. But again, Kayla is still going to be that powerhouse on defense, and she's still going to make her presence known, even if offensively it's not going down today. So kudos to the bench players. Kudos to them helping out. And also Sabrina leading the way, too. Yes. Because, initially I think her and JJ was a bit hard the first half, but they figured it out. Come the second half, they were on a roll. And, initially the first half they were missing shots. And I think Sabrina went 0 for 7, maybe, I think.
No, that was the previous game.
Oh, previous game. Yeah, sorry.
But she was not as impactful or not taking as many shots in the first quarter. And even the connection with JJ, I think that they were not really playing for each other. So I think that was what was missing in the first half.
What I did see was that there were more plays for JJ in this game, a lot more. And she may not have made all the shots initially. They were definitely playing for JJ way more. I felt like in this game, then it's been a while since I've seen them from the jump play for JJ. I felt like in previous games, they would, JJ was almost an afterthought. Not that they were thinking that, but it just felt that way. Kind of like they're not playing for JJ enough in the first half. And then the second half, they would do so. This game, I felt like they came out from the jump because, you're missing Stewie, you're missing Benaja. So JJ's your girl. Like you're gonna have to feed JJ, and and they made it tough initially, but they JJ and Sab both figured it out come the second half, and Sab went on a tear the second half of this game.
Man, I mean, 3 points from everywhere. She had a 3-point on Cardoso.
Man, that was beautiful.
On Mabry, like on everybody. And I felt like she was
a 3-point shot. You get a 3-point
exactly.
shot.
And I felt like she was taking the right shots. She wasn't forcing or taking quick threes like sometimes the Liberty have a tendency to do. She was, reading the defense really well and using screens and the ball movements of the Liberty to get those open spots. So, the leadership from Sabrina, knowing that, Breanna Stewart wasn't there, that is very promising for the future, because you know that if Stewie is injured or has an off night, you can count on Sabrina, and that was definitely good to see. And low-key, we're not talking about Jonquel Jones' passing skills, but she almost had a triple-double in this game with 14 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. But I think that she had quite a few games this year with like 6, 7, 8 assists. Yeah. And she has a way sometimes when she get the ball at the top of the arc, and when she was kind of like flicking the ball on one hand, and sort of pass it to a corner so quick that the defense has no time to react or to know what she's doing. That's something that is very sort of undermined or not really talked enough about Jonquel Jones. Ability to pass the ball is exceptional for a big, and she gave a couple of dimes to Fiebich, to Sab. She was feeding everybody, and that was great to see, because if Jonquel is not scoring, she could do so many other things. But you're right. I think Sandy did say at the end of the game that she had a conversation with Jonquel to make sure that she understands that she's important to this team, and maybe kind of motivate her, because I don't know if she feels discouraged if maybe things are not going away. Yeah. Sometimes she could get easily out of the game if she's in foul trouble. Yeah. Or if there's like a specific plan that is put in place against her. She kind of disappears from the game, and we need her. I mean, without JJ, the Liberty won't be able to go all the way.
Even with the greatness of Sabrina and Stewie, without JJ, you're not winning a championship. Absolutely not. I just think that in the games where JJ can be frustrated at times, it's because the plays that they're running, a lot of times it's because they're running these plays for 3-pointers. I just feel like, and that's where you get into this mode of you're always shooting a 3, you're always trying to go for a 3-point shot, and if it doesn't go, you're setting the other team up. Transition defense, you're not getting back in time, the other team's probably going to score. And to me, it's keeping it simple. I think a lot of teams, like, if the 3-point shot's available, somebody's wide open, okay, you take it. But your bread and butter as a team with the bigs that you have is that low post. You got to get them the ball somehow. Like, you got to drive. And you can't just let teams just keep you at the top of the arc. Like, you got to find a way in. And, for JJ, she's going to find a way. You got to get her the ball faster. Sometimes she gets open and they're passing the ball around. And it's like, JJ's open. But then by the time they realize it, defender's on her again. Like, they managed to get back to her. And so, it is having deliberate thought of JJ from the jump. Not every play is going to go to her. Yes, when Stewie's in the game, Stewie's going to have shots. Everybody's going to get their turn. But I do think you need to start that from the jump, instead of it seeming like you forgot to do it in the first half. And then you're like, oh yeah, we need to feed JJ. Let's do that more in the second half. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it's not always the first thought. And I feel like this needs to be your first thought. Like, this needs to be your first thought, because as JJ goes, this team will go. And obviously what we've seen is that Sab and Stewie, when they get on a roll, if JJ doesn't have a great night, if Sav and Stewie are having a great night, and Fiebich is contributing, that helps. That helps your team to win as well. But I do feel like JJ is a key piece.
Yeah, and especially in a game like today where she didn't necessarily shoot very well from the 3-point line.
Yeah.
When she was given the ball in a good spot in the paint, she would usually score against Cardoso. So, I mean, I think the Liberty are going to have to continue to be deliberate in how they using JJ and feed her in the paint for her to be successful and for the team to be successful. Now, one thing that was not successful, and every good things have to come to an end, right? But what ended today was the double streak for Angel Reese, who had 15 consecutive double, and it ended today. She had 16 rebounds. 16 rebounds. That's incredible. But only 8 points. And there were a couple of times where she had opportunities to get 10 points, but miss easy baskets. But with the game pretty much done, the Liberty having a 14-point lead, the Chicago Sky had the ball for the last possession. And the crowd, knew that she needed a basket to get that double and was really pushing. And Lindsay Allen had the ball, pass it to Angel Reese at the post. And then what happened, Felicia?
She got quadruple team.
Quadruple team.
Yeah, you just saw that ball kind of fly out in desperation, like somebody else take it.
They were like, no, it ain't gonna happen, not on us.
You're doing something historic, Angel Reese, but you ain't getting another double on us. Nope, not today. It's gonna end right here.
And to be fair, like the streak started against the Liberty a while ago. Yeah, I think it was in early June that it started, and it had to end against us. Now, I think sometimes we focus a lot on those things, and yes, it is historic what she has done. No other player had done that before. Up until that day, Candace Parker had the records over 2 seasons. But I think at some point it almost becomes too gimmicky because you feed her the ball at the end to get her to get that basket. But I'm sure she would rather have the win than another double because she's a competitor. She wants to win. And I think, at some point, like, the fans focus a little too much on those things. But I think she was more frustrated about the loss than anything else. But,
and frustrated with the refs and,
yeah, well,
probably for good reason, too. Well, I mean, I'm glad things went our way. Don't get me wrong. But even for the refs, I think, there were some calls that, maybe a bit questionable at times.
Oh, really? But I don't know. I didn't see. I'm a Liberty fan, so everything went our way. So,
I know for once we could say, like, oh, but I do think on both sides, the refs, like, things that they call fouls that were kind of ticky-tacky fouls, and then things that probably were actual fouls didn't get called. Like, it went back and forth because the Liberty had gripes, too. Even though the Liberty won, they had their own little gripes, but they were winning, so nobody's gonna really complain. But yeah, for the Chicago Sky, they might have had some valid complaints, and they got text for it for showing off that frustration. But again, as I've always said, these refs, no matter what team ends up on top, these refs need to be changed up. With the immediacy, but I fear...
You want to take two, or...?
No. I fear that they're not going to be changed anytime soon. So we got to deal with it as it comes.
It is what it is. I think we've done already a lot of podcasts on the WNBA ref. So we're going to leave it for today. But, the Liberty got the win, 81-67. They are the first team to have 20 wins this season. And now they have one final game before that break that is not really a break for some of those players. Yeah. But it would be on Tuesday against the Connecticut Sun, the first time that they will be facing Connecticut at home in New York. So definitely looking forward to that last game to kind of sort of mark the the end of the first part of our crazy whirlwind season and schedule. But thank you so much once again for listening to our podcast and for the support. We're really grateful that you get to listen to us talking about our favorite team. But we'll do a recap of the final game before the break for the matchup against Connecticut. But as we always say, Felicia,
let's go Liberty!